Hi, this is Megan from Bath Garden Center. So a couple weeks ago we asked you to send in some questions that you had about perennials and annuals. So that's what today's video is going to be about. We're going to try to address all the questions that you had. So our first question is how to prepare soil when landscape rocks have been on top of it so that you can plant flowers and whatever you need to plant after you've taken all the rock out. So we have such dense soil already. In being in Colorado, we have a lot of clay in our soil, which makes it really dense and hard. So adding a heavy rock on top of that is only going to compact your soil even more. So you would want to amend your soil and really till it and try to break up that density. And then you want to amend it with like a compost to kind of give it nice and fluffiness so that it can be a good soil for your plants to thrive and root through. So that's what you're going to want to do. Our second question is how often should you be fertilizing your annuals and perennials? So it kind of differs depending on what fertilizer you choose to use. There are a few different kinds of common fertilizers that you could find are a slow release fertilizer. We also have granular fertilizers, and there's also water soluble fertilizers. For the slow release fertilizer, it's just going to slowly release fertilizer into your soil just like it says, and that's not going to have to be reapplied until around like every 6 months, something like that. It's going to continue to slowly fertilize, so you don't have to do it that often. The granular form is typically going to be every 6 to 8 weeks, and you'll also just sprinkle that on the top. They're both good fertilizers. It just kind of depends on what you prefer. As far as water soluble fertilizers go, that's going to be typically used every 2 weeks during our growing seasons. So you are going to want to kind of keep up with that to promote blooming throughout the season or foliage growth, whatever it is that you're wanting. However, be aware to read the back of your fertilizers so that you can see what specifically it says as far as reapplication and how much you want to use. They'll have different kinds of rules for their fertilizers, so pay attention to the backs of your fertilizers. Our third question is that someone's lavender keeps dying and how to make it really happy throughout growing seasons and keep coming back over the years. So lavender really like full sun. You want to give them at least 6 to 7 hours of full sun. In that kind of sunlight, they will bloom more and they'll bloom better and they'll thrive better. So they can perhaps tolerate a little bit of less light, but they're going to thrive the best in full sun for at least 6 to 7 hours. You also want to remember to fertilize, push those blooms, as well as the foliage growth in that plant. You want to fertilize throughout the whole season so that it gives all of the nutrients that your plant needs and just keeps thriving. So those are kind of the two important things, is that you need to have the correct sunlight for them as well as fertilizing them throughout the season to see a better, happier plant. So our next question is, do hydrangeas need to be cut back in the spring or the fall? A lot of people will cut back their plants in the fall time, but however, it does provide some nice insulation for your plant throughout the winter. If you leave that, all the little dead excess stuff that kind of fell off there, it insulates it really nicely to prepare for the next season. You want to not cut back too much because there is a good chance that your plant is still taking the starches and the sugars from what it has and kind of storing it and keeping that energy into like the root system, into the rest of the plant. So you don't want to deprive it of that. So that's why it's more recommended to kind of prune back and cut back your hydrangeas in the springtime. However, there's like a paniculata family of hydrangeas and an arborescens hydrangeas. So paniculata are going to be more of the woodsy, branchy types of hydrangeas. You're going to want to cut those back more to achieve the shape that you're looking for. The arborescens are going to be more of like your typical plant where it's more like a less branchy stem. It's just like a nice green, like almost flower stem. So those you want to cut back too, but like I said, you want to kind of hold off to that for the springtime. Next question is, can lilacs tolerate shady environments? So it's not recommended to do that. They do want full sun, at least 6 to 7 hours of that. So I would avoid planting that in a shady spot. If you don't do that, it won't bloom as well and it won't grow as well. So try to give it the environment that it needs to thrive. Next question is that someone's knockout roses leaves got frosted a little bit, and will they come back? So they should be coming back. They should start seeing some new growth, like little tiny leaves coming out, or some green in your plant. If you're not seeing it, that could be a little bit concerning, but you can also test it. So you can grab like one of the branches, take a knife and kind of cut the top layer of skin of that, and it should be like a nice green color, and that is indication of it still being alive, and it's probably just taken a little time to develop and get back into what it needs to. If it's not green and it's more just a plain white and hard, or maybe a yellow or brown color, then it's not doing so great. So you can always do a knife check to see if your plant is still alive, and that's just a good way to check for that. This question is if fuchsias can tolerate the shade. Yes, they love the shade, so put them in a nice shady area, or to like some area with like maybe some partial shade, but not too many hours of the day of just being in nice or in the hot sun. So if you do put it in full sun or too much sun, it has the potential of burning your fuchsia. So steer clear from that and try to give it nice and shady environment. Next question is if you need to spray a preventative for insects, if there is something like that, but you don't want to harm the bees. So there is not a preventative that you can spray on your plant before any pests have gotten to your plant. You really want to use an insecticide or a pesticide when you start seeing pests on your plants. There are systemic granules that you sprinkle on the bottom. Your plant absorbs it, and any insect or pest that's kind of sucking out from your plant will digest this poison and die. So that's one of the options. There are also sprays that you can use. There's some that are not safe for people and pets, so keep your eye out for that. And there are also organic products for that. Like neem oil is going to be a nice pesticide that's pretty mild. So those are just some of the products that you can start using once you're noticing pests on your plant. Those pesticides and insecticides will harm the bees if they come in contact with it. So if you're not trying to harm the bees, but you want to take care of the pests on your annuals and your perennials, we have praying mantis eggs as an option, as well as ladybugs. They will stay and continue to eat the pests on your plants until there aren't any. So that's a really good option for not harming the bees but still taking care of your pests outside. So this question is, what are some good plants for a north-facing patio that does not get a lot of sunlight? So some annuals that you could plant for that are going to be lobelia, your impatiens, begonias. Those are going to be nice low light plants that like shade to partial sun. So annuals. As far as perennials go, you want to find a hydrangea or a boxwood or Fuchsia or something like that. Those are going to be perfect for that kind of environment. So there are options for using perennials and annuals on that side of your house. You just need to make sure that that's going to be the light requirement that they need. So this question is asking what kind of perennials and annuals rabbits won't show interest in. So for perennials that we have that can kind of deter your rabbits from are going to be your daffodils, your red hot pokers, your sedums, foxglove, irises. Those are going to be really good plants that won't get eaten by your rabbits. So perennials, as far as annuals go, sweet alyssum, geraniums, snapdragons, lantana, strawflower, those are good options for those kinds of plants that rabbits don't really show interest in or want to eat. So that's just a few of them that we have that you can plant in your garden that will not get eaten by your rabbits. We do have more resources on our blog about what kind of other plants are rabbit resistant. So more information on our blog about that if you are interested in looking into that. So our last question is, when do you want to transplant your strawberry plants? So that's going to be around the fall that you're going to want to transplant those. That's a pretty safe time for established strawberries to get moved. It isn't bad that to transplant your strawberries in the springtime. It's not saying that they're not going to survive through that. It's just more recommended to do it in the fall. Well, thank you for watching this video. If you have any other questions about plants, we are more than happy to answer them.